What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one will break down what's going on with NIO stock, what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to talk about the overall market, what's happening with many different tickers out there, what the news is saying about NIO, and how it may move going into tomorrow. But before I break anything down with all this information, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things real quick. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so looking at the 30 minutes time frame, NIO got this rejection off this $11.32 area, forming this bearish divergence and getting a very, very clean technical rejection. Now, the 30 minutes 200 EMA is around this $10.54 levels. There's a good chance that NIO might come down a little bit lower before trying to get a bounce. But whether or not this thing gaps up and starts pushing or if it ends up dropping is not so much dependent on just NIO alone this time around, but also on the big earnings coming out for tomorrow for the market. So what are they? Tomorrow before the market opens, we have JP Morgan Chase, we have Citigroup, Wells Fargo, PNC, and BlackRock all reporting earnings. What they say is going to have a big effect on the entire market. What they report is going to be huge. It's not just about how well they do at beating like EPS and revenue and all these different things. It's also going to be about guidance. Guidance is going to be very key. So you have to pay attention to what they're projecting and what the outlooks are looking like. If we're projecting very strong earnings for not just this quarter, but also for like the next few quarters, the next year for most of these companies, that's going to be a good earnings report. That's what I'm going to say. That's what I'm referring to if I say a good earnings report, basically strong guidance and strong earnings. If it's a bad earnings report, we're either going to see bad earnings for this latest report or weak guidance. All right. So we're going to be watching that carefully. I'm going to use those terms in just a couple of minutes. To add on to this, okay, we have the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Report and the 5-year inflationary expectations at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you watch this very carefully because this will affect the markets. As far as NIO goes, the Euro NCAP 2023 assessment protocols has said some good things about NIO. It became the first automaker to achieve a 5-star ratings, which is showing that NIO is a very, very safe car, very, very nice rating from them, and that's very, very good news for them. The ET5 and the EL7 received some very, very good ratings, and that's very, very good news for NIO. Remember, this was not dictated excuse me, sorry guys. This was not dictated by the Chinese government. This was by the Euro NCAP that gave NIO a very good rating. To add on to this, there were some contentious things said by William Lee Ben. If you want to go there, he said some things about the American stance with how Elon Musk was being treated in China relative to how NIO is being treated now, and this has led to some controversy. Now, I'm not going to really take a stance on this, but basically what he said was, if you look at Elon Musk, when he went to China, he received lots of good treatment and he was able to sell cars there. And Tesla's benefiting greatly from the Chinese markets. But now that NIO is trying to expand and go to the USA, it's becoming very difficult for them because of political business and political tensions. Now, many people may not be happy with buying a Chinese car here in the US, or they could be, depending on the individual. But the point I'm trying to make is that William Lee Ben was arguing that we should not let politics get in the way of business and the prosperity of our markets, because we need the world to transition away from fossil fuels as fast as possible. And we're simultaneously working hard together. Now, his arguments, you could argue that there's like this slippery slope or anything like that, but the thing about it is you have to remember that Elon Musk entered China during a very different time when tensions were very different back then. Compared to right now, things are very different, and you have to consider that. But I do think he has a good point. You could argue that that is very much true. And then, as an unbiased investor in NIO, here's what I'm going to say. I'm not going to say he's right or wrong, but what I will say is that if he is correct about NIO one day making it to the USA, and if political tensions were not getting in the way, that would greatly benefit NIO if it did enter the USA. Now, has it done it so far? No, it hasn't really done it, but it does have its one of its headquarters here. The Silicon Valley developmental phase is actually here for NIO. So NIO is in the USA, but they're not really selling cars here. So there's a big difference. Now, in my opinion, it really, it's just worth noting that this is going on, but I don't really consider this any like massive news. I know it's making some headlines. There is once again confirmation that CYVN has invested a 7% stake in NIO, which is owned by Abu Dhabi. And that's once again the bullish news. This came out a while back, buying almost $1 billion worth of NIO shares. But we have confirmation of that being legitimate. So that's good too. Volume for NIO from a technical standpoint is quite decent at 59 million. The short volume relative to price is actually at about 56%. And we saw a little bit more shorting on NIO. We saw about 15 million shares shorted just a couple of days ago, then 13 million just 2 days ago. So we saw more shorting on NIO. That's part of why NIO has been dropping just a little bit. And in terms of seasonality, this doesn't matter as much because NIO had a very weak first half of the year, at least during the second quarter in particular, with weak deliveries. But for the second half of the year, I think it's projected to do very well, as Morgan Stanley was saying. We tend to be green about 53% of the time on Fridays, so hopefully we get a good day for tomorrow. On top of that, Morgan Stanley, even though they are saying NIO is going to outperform the market, they were saying that the second half is very promising. They said that just yesterday. So what am I seeing for NIO? How is it going to move? It depends on earnings for tomorrow. Don't forget about these earnings. If we get good earnings with strong guidance, NIO could gap up and retest $11 and start breaking up to 11.25 at the very least. If we have bad earnings, if the banks don't do too well, or if the guidance is very weak, we could see NIO gap down with the market and retest 10.5 and maybe even break lower to these imbalances down here around this the very low tens. That's another possibility. So it depends on the banks. That's going to dictate NIO. I can't really predict it. So please be open-minded and prepared for anything. My guess would be, from a technical standpoint, it looks like NIO might try to gap up and then drop, but like I said, it really depends on the banks. If we get good bank earnings, we could see SPY retest 450. If it manages to break that, we have quite a bit of resistance above here. I know these levels are very tight, but that's because SPY is kind of tight in this level. So if it breaks above 450 with good bank earnings, you're going to be watching 450.5, 451, and then 452 after that, and then 452.69 as resistances. If it breaks down, you're going to be watching this make its way down. It's about 447.87 in my opinion, if not 447.5, then 446. So it's going to make a big move down if we get bad earnings from the banks. Good earnings, and it's going to break above 450 and go all the way up to 452, most likely. For Tesla, good earnings are going to send this thing to 280 plus. If it breaks that, we could see 283, then potentially 285. Bad earnings, it's going to come all the way down to 275 or lower. If it breaks below that, we're going to be watching 274. If that fails us, 272 could come. It all depends on the bank earnings. I think that's going to be the biggest factor. We also have the Michigan Consumer Report at about 10 o'clock a.m., but that's capricious, so we'll have to wait and see on that. And last but not least, for the triple Q, bullish bank earnings would send this thing all the way up to 380. If that breaks, we're going to be watching this 382 area. And if that breaks, it's going to pump even higher than that. We could get close to about 384. If we get bad earnings, it's going to come all the way down to 377, 376.28, and potentially 375. I am currently in the middle, depending on the bank earnings. I just can't predict it. Who knows at this point what the banks are going to give us? And the best thing to do is just sit on the sidelines and watch. All right, so for NIO for tomorrow, the biggest thing dictating it, is going to be the whole market, which is going to be dictated by the bank earnings. Be ready, be prepared. It's going to be huge, and we will see what happens. But always know both of the contingencies I went over, and we will see by tomorrow morning. All right, thank you for listening. Have a great day, everyone. NIO to the moon, as the long term is still very bright, and peace out.